Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Wait, Are These Guys Friends? I am Mike. I'm here with Randy, and not 30 seconds before we started recording, I forced Randy to watch the first 5 minutes of the movie Terminator Dark Fate. So I guess we can ask right off the top, Randy, are we friends?
I don't know. You sent it to me like a day and a half ago, and I said, yeah, I'll get to it. And then right before I said, I'm not going to, I didn't watch it. Sorry. And so what's forcible friendship? I don't know. Like,
The fact that I wouldn't let us record this program today without you taking 4.5 minutes, and no, there was like an extra scene, 3 minutes of your life to watch this trash. You might think, well, it sounds like we're diving right into what we enjoyed this week. But again, I mentioned last week, what we enjoy doesn't feel right because I watched that and I didn't enjoy it. I watched a lot this week. Do you want to talk about anything in your week, anything thrilling and exciting other than media, Randy? That sounded condescending. I meant, like, is there anything good in your life? Hello, friend. Is there anything nice in your life you'd like to talk about before we get moving?
Not really. Let's go to media. So,
Oh, thank God. Although that's kind of sad. What's wrong? Is everything okay? Now I'm worried about you.
No, we are grand. We have a lot of media to get into. So
We do. And I'll tell you, it actually happened. I took one of your recommendations. And on top of that, I don't regret it, if you can believe that.
All right.
I watched all of Kevin Can Fuck Himself between last week's episode and this week's episode. It's what was it? 16 episodes. And I loved it. I will say, and I told you this, the first half of the first season, because it's interesting, right? It's only 8-episode seasons. It took 4 episodes to hook me. And I had actually been thinking, like, if it doesn't do something for me by the end of this episode, I'm tapping out, right? Like, I've given it its fair shake. And I can't put my finger on what made it connect. Or if it was all the pieces kind of coalesced, everything came together. Because it does feel almost like 3 or 4 disparate, different plot threads in the first 4 episodes. And then it kind of suddenly becomes a thing, a whole. And then you're really moving till the end of the series for the next season and a half of it all coming together. But it took that time to get there. And once it got there, I really enjoyed the hell out of it. I was curious if they would ever explore the conceit of half the show is presented as a sitcom, half the show is presented as a serious like drama, if that would ever be addressed. And I'll tell you, I'm glad it wasn't. Spoiler alert, by the way.
Right.
Spoiler to anyone that wants to watch this. I'm going to talk genuine plot points after this, since we've both seen this. So anyone that wants to avoid proper spoilers, I don't know, scan ahead a little bit. We'll say something and you'll figure it out that we're not talking about this anymore. Without them having to explain it and take away the art of it, is it sort of the mental health aspect of she is performing and she is performative when around this person that she hates and her life is miserable, so that's why you get that vibe? That's the way I sort of leaned into it.
That's sort of how I took it. I basically took it as until she stood up for herself, there was no reality to her reaction with her husband. So, like, you know, it was just every interaction was her become kind of steamrolled over and entering this world that wasn't real because she didn't have any control over it. So it was like she was kind of taking control back. But and I mean, you and I talked about it. And again, we're in spoiler time. So, but in the final episode, the finale of the second season, is the only time you see Kevin in the single cam, darker look. And boy, it's just a great reveal. Well done. Like he's kind of terrifying at that moment because
and it's funny because he's always referenced and discussed in single cam mode. And he's, you know, your goofy sitcom protagonist who is an asshat, but like they all are, your Kevin James, etc. And then in dramatic mode, it was, I think about in the second season when they almost try to use his powers. They consider them almost like mystical ability. They don't say it. I don't want to lean into people thinking they think there's mystical ability, but it's more, he has an aura of if they put him in the right direction on something, his idiocy will solve their problems. Maybe they can use this for him. But that same energy turns in that last scene where she asks for divorce and he's like, I'll ruin you. And all that Kevin energy of he'll he has the ability to make everything about him and change. He's like, I will focus all of this on you and I will ruin you. But it's presented not in the comedy style and the drama style. And it's just like, man, this is real good.
Yeah.
I didn't expect the character of Neil to become as prevalent as he did in the second season. I never saw that coming. And I thought that was handled really well. And that guy, like, this sounds ridiculous. I'm like, he had such an increased role and did so much and was so good. I genuinely went back to see if they recast him between seasons. Like, did they change actors? Did they do something? No, they just made him a real character as opposed to a sitcom character. So it was like, man, that was really, really well done. So I want to run down everything I watched, and I don't only want to run it down. I want to tell you why I watched it and how my mental process got me to each one of these.
Okay.
So first, I actually wanted to start with Terminator Dark Fate. And I finally only watched this yesterday. So I watched it last out of all these other movies I'm going to name, despite being the original movie that I was thinking of. I should watch that. I've never seen Dark Fate.
Okay.
Dark Fate led me to talk to you. Says, hey, man, I think I'm going to finally watch this shitty Terminator movie that everybody hates. And we both realized, shockingly, that we like Terminator Genisys, the movie that I think historically most people hate.
Yep.
Like, Dark Fate was not well received, but I feel like Genisys was pretty reviled at the time. Yeah. And I remember leaving a theater. I went with a friend, and I left the theater, and I thought, oh, I liked that. I thought that was fun. Yeah, like, it wasn't perfect, but I enjoyed that. I'm not being sarcastic. The level of vitriol and disgust I got in that moment. Like, are you serious? You liked that? I was like, yeah, I thought it was okay. And I found out you like Genisys. We found a thing.
Yep.
So I rewatched.
Well, to be fair, you gave me 3 of them and said, which one of these do you like the most? And so.
That's fair. Basically, the 3 Terminator 3s is what I was saying. Because Terminator Salvation is not a Terminator 3. Terminator Salvation is a Terminator 4 that technically takes place after the original Terminator 3, despite all the recastings.
Right.
They have the same characters. Claire Danes' characters there, played by someone else. Different John Connor. It is technically a Terminator 4. Really, the only genuine Terminator 4 we've ever got. The 3 Terminator 3s are Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, which I love in a B-movie quality. It is not great, but it is still kind of, it's your last gasp of classic Arnold. And he still feels like classic Arnold in that movie.
Good fan service for sure, yeah.
Yes. That's the problem, though. It was a little too fan servicey.
Yeah.
Even for these other movies that play with time travel and references, it still somehow feels a little more fan servicey than some of these movies.
Sure.
They're definitely running the greatest hits, as it were.
Yep.
Dark Fate, to skip to the last one, the most recent one, brings back Linda Hamilton for the first time since Terminator 2. And she is definitely the best part of the movie. But she is also just, you can tell she's there they drove a dump truck of money up to her to say, we're desperate, we got nothing left.
Yeah.
It intrigues me that apparently James Cameron has a story credit on this one, which is the first one he has had since Terminator 2. That said, he also was part of the ad campaign for Genisys, giving it his endorsement. So, who knows where he's at.
Always around.
Yeah. The only 2 Terminator movies he didn't endorse are 3 and Salvation, but there's an interview where Schwarzenegger says he called up James Cameron and says, should I do this? Are you okay if I do this? And Cameron basically was like, how much are they paying you? And he was, and Schwarzenegger told him, he was like, do the movie.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, take the money, do the movie.
It's not like Arnold has the most pristine record, I mean, he's taken some not amazing things for a payday in the past.
As silly as it sounds, at the time of Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, before all these other reboots, before all these other things, it was one of, I think, when was he governor? When was he governor of California?
2000?
I couldn't remember if it was before or after this. 2003 to 2011. So this was the last, I think this is one of the last movies he did before he became governor, because it came out in 2003. So at the time, pre-governor, Arnold was being very selective with his projects, especially because this was about to happen. He was ramping up. This is not anything I've read. I'm of the mind, knowing he was about to do this move to politics, he might have done Terminator 3 as let me do the Terminator one more time,
Yeah. Or one last, knowing that how much he was getting paid, maybe knowing that he's going into politics, and it wouldn't hurt to have a war chest at the same time too. So
that's a very good call. That's an absolutely good call. Genesis. I don't understand why people hated it, and also it does keep the Emilia Clarke can't appear in anything but Game of Thrones because everything she shows in bombs. Like anytime Emilia Clarke tries to branch out into anything that's not Game of Thrones, it dies a horrible death.
Yeah.
I cannot defend Secret Invasion, which is utter garbage, but I will defend this movie. It was clever, it was original, and it to me, things that I think other people are upset about, like, oh, they made John Connor a bad guy. Oh, they did this, they did that. I actually thought they didn't just do it randomly. They didn't actually interrupt the continuity. They didn't make John Connor in Genesis or an evil robot cyborg until after he had done all the things he had needed to do canonically in the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he had some secret plan. He was a human trying to save humanity. And they even say there's a point that this is where actually the movie gripped me, where he was like, my knowledge stops here. This is as much as I know. I don't know what happens after this. And then 10 minutes later, he gets wrecked. And I'm like, I thought that was clever. He did everything he could do within the time stream. I thought that was a fun idea. And then it became, time stream after time stream after time stream, blah, 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 blah. I thought it was fun and clever. Everyone else hated it because in theory, I think it technically made Terminator 1 and 2 not canonical, but I'm over that concept. Multiverses, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. It was a fun movie. End of story.
Oh, and that stuff was introduced in those movies before we were beaten over the head with it with Marvel for the next 15 years anyway. So.
Agreed. Yeah. I do wonder if some of the CGI and de-aging and things that they had done for that movie looked better, if maybe it would have been received better. Because you got to think that's 2011 era, and I was just talking about a 2024 movie that looked like shit. 2011 is not doing it any better. So I wonder if they had big ideas that maybe they couldn't do visually as well, and that kind of hurt it, I think, too.
I still think that in that sense, especially that little bit that we watched the beginning of Dark Fate, I mean, what does de-aging technology get you for that? Like, just get a mask. He's gonna have sunglasses on. He's gonna have a flat top. Like it just, I like don't even.
And how much money did they?
He doesn't say anything. He didn't say anything. So it's like you don't even, and not that you would need. You don't need much for that delivery, but still.
For anyone that hasn't seen, if you watch the first 4 minutes of Terminator Dark Fate, you can find it on YouTube. That's how I just showed Randy. They Alien 3 Terminator 2, in that they take the happy ending of Terminator 2 or the optimistic ending of Terminator 2, and they kill John Connor with a digitally de-aged Arnold, a fake CGI Edward Furlong. Linda Hamilton's CGI looks pretty good, but my thought on this is because she doesn't move or emote, and there's long scenes in Terminator 2 where she is literally sitting in that exact position. I'm like, that could just be ripped out footage. They could have just matted that out.
Well,
where she looks exactly like that.
When John Connor got shot, then everything they shot was from behind her running to him. So I'm sure that was either a double or something like that. So.
Like the Edward Furlong CGI is terrible. The Arnold CGI is terrible. It looks bad, plastic, and more than anything, inaccurate. I've seen Terminator 2 a billion times. That is not what Arnold Schwarzenegger looks like at that time frame.
Right. That was like CrossFit Arnold. He wasn't beefy enough.
So that led me to, what other movies did I slander that, or has been slandered, that maybe I should revisit or give another chance? And that led me to, well, I also want to see Alien Romulus in the theater, and I still haven't. But I thought, I've heard, because spoilers, things get out, that while it takes place after the first Alien, it apparently references at some point the Prometheus movies, which so I thought, well, fuck, I haven't watched those since they came out. And I didn't remember liking Prometheus, and Alien Covenant was kind of really shit on, and I don't think I finished it. I saw it on TV. I'm going to actually commit. I'm going to rewatch Prometheus, and I'm going to watch Alien Covenant. So I sat down and I watched those. And can I tell you, Prometheus is extremely flawed. I liked it. I don't know if I think my mindset at the time is like my mindset, like many people now. It is not an alien movie, and it was billed as an alien prequel, and it was Ridley Scott, and all the marketing machine says it's alien, Ridley Scott's return to the alien universe.
Right.
And yes, technically. And is there something that is lost in giving the aliens an origin? Probably. That said, I don't know if you need to look at it in a vacuum or if time has simply calmed me. Prometheus is Prometheus is a very flawed movie, but I really enjoyed it. Honest to God, I enjoyed it in it's almost camp. It's this drama movie, but the performances are so good, and David and Michael Fassbender are so scenery chewing.
Yep.
That it's like, I can't hate this right now. But then I can hate the sequel. Alien Covenant is bad. They tried to make it more it was reactionary to Prometheus, right? Yep. Oh, you weren't happy with the Prometheus world I made? Fine, I'll give you more Alien. But then they kind of made it, if Prometheus lived in a void, it is detached enough to say, oh, I guess this was technically an origin somewhere down the line.
Okay.
Alien Covenant tried to connect more dots, and that's where things started to fall apart. And also the fact that they redesigned the chest burster alien when it's supposed to apparently be the same one, but it looks different. And like Ridley Scott has actually said in an interview, and this is what makes me nervous about Ridley Scott tackling franchise projects. Ridley Scott said, I didn't realize how attached people were to that alien design. Like, Are you kidding me? You didn't talk to literally any fan. It's iconic, you idiot. And all I could think was, this is a man who is now making a Gladiator 2 for some reason. That said, he did have the best blunt quote in an interview recently, which was somebody went, hey, Ridley, is Russell Crowe going to be in Gladiator 2? And he went, his character is dead. No. And that was the entire answer. And I was like, no, to be fair, that doesn't mean anything, but You could do it any way you want. But I just really appreciated the bluntness of that.
Next question.
Yes. So, and that was all because I'd watched those because I wanted to go see Alien Romulus, which I still haven't gone to see. And then I thought, well, I really want to see the new Beetlejuice also because reviews have been B+, unnecessary but fun, which is the best Tim Burton reviews he's gotten in 20 years.
He usually gets half of that, just not the other half.
Yeah, right? Yeah, unnecessary. No, listener, your recording did not cut out this time. That was...
Nope.
So I rewatched Beetlejuice, just because, and then also didn't go to see the new Beetlejuice. So I haven't gone to see any of these movies I say I need to go see. I'm going to try taking the energy to actually go to the theater. I would see them right now if I could watch them on my couch.
Yeah, agreed.
But the original Beetlejuice, look, it's still a perfect movie. It's a perfect movie. I don't know what else to say. It's great. There's a reason it got the status that it did. And the fact that they made a sequel that apparently didn't ruin the first one is enough for me. You know, it's good, great.
It boggles the mind that, and I would love to see the MPAA's like boardroom in like the mid to late 80s because some of the movies that got PG ratings are like, what?
And it's crazy too because everyone talks about how PG-13 came about because of Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981, and you would still have an intense period in the late 80s to early 90s where movies that I think would be R today were a PG-13 or less. It was crazy. Like what was Beetlejuice actually rated?
I think just PG.
Crazy. That's a PG-13 movie today, simply based on references alone, I feel like.
Yep.
A nice fucking model. You don't get an F-bomb in a PG movie today. That does not happen.
I always think of that and Big, and I'm just like, these are two movies that were PG, and for some reason, because you always hear about, and it's I don't know if it's an unwritten rule where like PG-13 movies get one, right? Like that's always usually what they say, but to have two PG movies with it, you're like, oh, okay.
One Beetlejuice aside before we move on. Anyway, that's everything I watched this week, which is quite a bit of stuff, incidentally. One new show, one movie that's a few years old, but I'd never seen. So the new cat just walked by and she's just hit the point where she'll be in a room with me, but won't come over to me. She's so tiny. She's so tiny.
Oh, and there she goes.
Just love me. Why won't you love me? Desperation. So, feeling good about all that. But movie-wise, cat-wise, she doesn't want anything to do with me. But one Beetlejuice story from when I was a kid, and obviously, like you said, there was a lot of shits and F-bombs and things. And an example as to why they probably had to look at these ratings, because I said some swears that my parents were not happy with because of it. So I did not know some curses were bad, and I did not understand that some curses were bad, and I also apparently didn't know what a millennium was. There is a quote in this movie where he goes, make my millennium, like, fuck, and he grabs and all right. So I watched one weekend Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Beetlejuice. And then I used 2 words at the YMCA locker room when my dad took me swimming at my dad that he was not happy with. My dad is a very even-tempered guy. I've never seen my dad angry or lying, but he was stunned and angry because he didn't know I didn't know what these words meant. And he thought, why is my son saying this to me? I called my dad a bastard.
Oh boy.
Eric called Khan a bastard, and I thought that's a fun word. And then I told him not to make my millennium. I told my dad to make my machidium, which is not a word. But I called my dad a bastard and told him to make my machidium. And he was so angry, and I got in so much trouble until he realized I didn't know anything I was saying. Like, I was just parroting words. Yep. He was angry, and then he was like, wait, you don't have any idea what you're saying right now, do you? Like, and I was like, what do you mean? They're in the movies. And he's like, okay, we got to have a talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, good times. Good
my.
Yeah. It's feeling good about life. What do you consume? Yeah, I know you said you don't like consume, but I can't go into what you'd enjoy because I just talked about shit. What I did watch
was something that I did actually enjoy. There was we're going back to talking Netflix. This was originally supposed to be developed as a Fox miniseries there was a novel called The Perfect Couple. This is the one that came out. It's Nicole Kidman, Liev Schreiber. Yeah. I'm blanking on Bono's daughter's name. Eve Lucen, is that her name?
I didn't know that was Bono's daughter's name.
Okay.
Oh, baby alert. I worked so hard to get that role. So.
I mean, we had also seen her in, I'm going to have to look it up. There was an HBO or Max, I guess, kind of thriller called Behind Her Eyes. Oh no, that was Netflix also. Sorry. But she was very good in that. It was a kind of intriguing sort of supernatural concept, psychological thriller. And so the concept for this is there's this kind of family that lives in Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, whatever it's, and they're like old money, like super rich family. So all
these
like
rich old white people are playing rich old white people. It's the role I was born to play, baby.
Except Nicole Kidman does a British accent instead of an Australian one, or an American one. So it's a stretch. So, but the Eve Lucen is a quote unquote outsider that meets one of the sons and is getting married to him.
Hang on, what did you say her last name was? Were you saying it is?
It's Houston, not Lucen.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. I thought you said Lucen. I was going to correct you.
I did incorrectly, yes. So.
All right, good. I was letting you know that, Jesus, I'm sorry, I'm harping on this. What a fucking celebrity child name. Memphis Eve, Sunny Day, Iris Houston. Fuck off.
I mean,
I'm sorry. Please continue.
Her mom's an activist too, so it's like it's between you get Bono and an activist together, which Bono is already an activist. So it's
Bono thinks he's an activist.
I'm surprised it's not like, I'm surprised there's not more triggering words in her name, to be honest
with
you.
I'm just going to take a stab and say that household sits around their living room and smells their own farts instead of watching TV at night.
I just think of the South Park.
That's honestly what I was taking it from. The smugness. I was ripping it from that. The smugness of all of that. So, anyway, sorry. I may not like a lot of these people. Anyway, please continue.
Yes. So what happens is at the weekend of the wedding, one of the participants in the wedding winds up dead. And then it's the how did that happen, kind of the unveiling, and you start to realize people are not who they seem, which is a tried and true kind of drama / psychological thriller type thing, but still really well done, fun. And there's a great couple twists in the final episode, not necessarily related to the murder or the death, spoiler alert, but that you don't see coming, which are great. And performances are fun. Nicole Kidman plays this great kind of matriarch trying to keep everything together, but she's also a successful novelist, and so just kind of this perfect, almost Stepfordian, is that a word?
I mean, she was in that movie, famously a
That's
bomb.
True, she was. You're right. Yeah,
famously troubled, if not a bomb. But yeah, trying to remember. It was a very troubled production.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Very, very watchable. So just like 6 episodes that you can get through really quickly. Well, that's what you want
when you're watching something, to be very watchable. Sorry.
Yes, you know what I mean. You're an asshole. No,
I am. Yes.
No, very easy to watch. Very, very bingeable. There, I'll use a word that actually is not what I'm. It's just fun. It's a very great kind of murder mystery whodunit. Again, I love the narrative style of people are not what they seem, and things kind of uncover, and I like the caper-esque aspect of that, and so it was right up my alley, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
That's awesome, good stuff. And honestly, the cast looks amazing, and it sounds silly, but like I realize when Liev Schreiber shows up in stuff, I never think about him, and then I think, oh, Liev Schreiber. I like Liev Schreiber. It's just an odd thing in that regard.
There you go.
All right, so our main topic today is a sequel. We're doing a sequel.
Look out.
Just like the Muppets saying in their sequel. we're back by popular demand. So, genuinely, our second most popular episode of all time is a breakdown of NBC's must-see TV lineup from 1993 to 2006. And we talked about every show that was aired in that time frame. And boy, were there a lot. There were a lot of 8:30 and 9:30 replacement shows, test shows, failures, and obviously a lot of classic hits. Mm-hmm. Today, we are going to continue on. Must-see TV branding stopped in 2006. They switched it up, and they switched it to Comedy Night Done Right. And that happened from 2006 to 2012. So the last season of Must-See TV and the first season of Comedy Done Right are pretty fucking similar. You have My Name Isn't Earl and The Office, which were the 9 and 9:30 shows, moving to 8 and 8:30. They're now the anchor programs. Will and Grace, which I believe had either ended, or did it go? It had ended. Its original run ended in 2006. So Must-See TV and Will and Grace went out the door on its original run together. Mm-hmm. Scrubs, which had been in and out on Must-See TV, but part of the problem with Scrubs on NBC is they moved its time slot, its day. It probably could have had higher ratings than it ever did on NBC, but they moved that show so fucking much, and you've seen the creators talk about it. It did start mid-season at 9 o'clock for Comedy Night Done Right's first season in 2006. But the first chunk of this season actually did Deal or No Deal at 9 o'clock. Then they brought back sitcoms look at it in thirds for 9 to 10. The first third of the season was Deal or No Deal. The second third of the season was Scrubs and 30 Rock. The third part of the season, the last part, was 9:30. They debuted Andy Barker PI. Do you remember the show? This is our first new show we're talking about.
I had to look it up, and I must have been conflating it with the other Andy Richter show. So that was...
Is that the one where at the 5 kids?
Andy Saves the World or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
The Fox one, right? So, so I I remember it being a show, and I remember him and I think Tony Hale's on it too, right? And I remember of it, but I couldn't tell you anything other than I'm guessing he's a private investigator, but I don't know much about it. I must not have watched it.
So I do kind of remember this. Andy Richter Controls the Universe was much better. Andy Richter Controls the Universe was a lot funnier. It kind of predated the Arrested Development's tone and comedy and the way it handled character. And it had a really nice cast. And it had writers from The Simpsons. And it was the thing that Andy Richter left Conan O'Brien to do. Mm-hmm. So when he stopped being Conan's sidekick, he left to do Andy Richter Controls the Universe. He did a few things in between. There's about a 4-year gap between that show ending and Andy Barker PI starting. And I wanted to like this show a lot. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, no one did. It did have Tony Hale. Andy Richter was a PI on accident. He's supposed to be a public accountant, but he takes the office of someone who is a private investigator in a strip mall, and he winds up doing that private investigator work.
Co-created by Conan and then the guy who ended up doing Blackish, right?
You're going to see Jonathan Groff. That's the Blackish guy. Not Jonathan Groff, who went to do Broadway, Jonathan Groff. Right. 2 different Jonathan Groffs. Funny thing about this, it's listed in that 9:30 spot. It had a 6-episode run. Only 3 of those episodes actually aired Thursday nights at 9:30. The first episode debuted also on a different night, special, and they did a double feature with the show Reigns, which I also remember wanting to like and didn't. That show only lasted 7 episodes. That was Jeff Goldblum as a police detective in New York, as you do.
Oof.
So
that's odd.
I
good on you. I don't remember that at all.
The catch to that one is it was the post-Sherlock era of every detective has to have a quirk.
Gotcha.
So Reigns' quirk was that he hallucinated the victims. And he would speak to them and use them as sounding boards to talk about the case. So it had a lot of quippy, fast-talking Jeff Goldblum dialogue. So I wanted to like it because it was Jeff Goldblum and like doing his Jeff Goldblum thing. It lasted 7 episodes. It did not work out for him.
Yeah.
But back to Andy Barker. The first episode aired with that show that night. The next 3 aired on NBC on Thursday nights, Comedy Night, done right at 9:30. The next 2 were moved to air back-to-back on a random Saturday to burn it off because it got canceled.
Gotcha.
So you got, to say Andy Barker aired at 9:30 on NBC is barely qualified.
I think I read this too, that this is the first instance, so I guess it would have to be, I don't know how Andy Barker PI was shot. I'm guessing, was it single cam, same kind of idea, or was it more traditional? Okay.
No, it was a single cam.
This was the first instance of a 4-hour or a 2-hour sitcom block where all of them were single cam. There wasn't the traditional sitcom
you're
multicam in here anywhere. Now, the year before, it had only been Will and Grace out of the 4, so, but I think it's notable for that. I found that in a couple places. So.
You are 100% correct.
And changes the way we think about sitcoms going forward, really.
By the way, real quick, if anyone wants our thoughts on My Name is Earl or The Office, we talked about the early seasons and the debuts of those in our Must See TV episode. I would like to note that the first 2 seasons of The Office, only the first season of The Office was Must See TV. So that first bad season is Must See TV. The Office comes into its own on Comedy Night done right. When you look at The Office as you think of The Office, it's this era.
Yep.
Seasons 2, 3, 4, 5 for me. 6, 7, 8, 9 are not good to me. The last good Office storyline to me is the Michael Scott Paper Company, and that happens in season 5, at the end of season 5. You will get 2 more seasons with Michael Scott, and then you'd have the 2 seasons after it without him.
No, I'd say there's certainly moments that are wonderful throughout. I think 6, 7, but the overarching thing, yeah, too. They couldn't find something they liked, or they tried to push too many people into it to be like, oh, this will work here. I mean, I think Robert California was a nice addition. I did think Spader was pretty good, but most of the other arcs, I mean, just to have Ed Helms just become kind of nasty is not really fun. Like it took away a lot of the charm there. I mean, I guess quote unquote, he had the redemptive arc at the end of it, but.
Barely. That was tacked on and forced, I felt like.
Yeah.
They really made... So Andy Bernard they tried to do for Ed Helms and Andy Bernard, because think about when The Office started, Steve Carell did 40-Year-Old Virgin around the same time, skyrocketed him, really helped the show. He's the boss. He was already doing The Office, but it really helped the show. Ed Helms has The Hangover, so they put him into the boss role, which makes sense from a name value standpoint. The problem is the character, as Andy Bernard had been written, should never have been in that role.
I would agree. I have one post note. It doesn't go with NBC here, but just My Name is Earl creator Greg Garcia. I don't know if you watched Raising Hope at all on Fox. I adored that show. So it was a fun, like My Name is Earl was my introduction to some of his stuff, and then from it, so it gave me that jumping off point to enjoy Raising Hope. But not involved here, but I just wanted to throw
No, that's good, because I don't remember if we talked about it in the last episode. We talked about My Name is Earl. I think we did. I have not watched Raising Hope, except for I've heard it's fun. I've watched all the YouTube clips. There's a compilation of all the My Name is Earl references on Raising Hope.
Yeah.
Because they try to solve a lot of the mysteries and things in the background on like TV sets. The cliffhangers that were left on My Name is Earl are like one scene, quick background references on Raising Hope. Like, yeah, they did a thing. It's fine. It's still happening out in the world, which is kind of funny.
It has some pretty like wacky musical number asides too. I mean, I know you like My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend so much that I think it's not to that extent of being intertwined with the music, but there are musical numbers within Raising Hope that are really fun. So, but
that's good to know.
I'm dovetailing here because that's a different network and a different.
No, that's fine, and that's what these always are. It's the same characters, the same, and really, the fact that My Name's Earl kind of in spirit lives on, like its mentality, maybe its spirit, that vibe. That's where you could go if, oh shit, this show ended, I liked it too soon. Well, you got a spiritual successor in a way that you can go find and watch. Looking at Scrubs, when did Scrubs move? They did their last real season on ABC, and then they did After Scrubs, which we will pretend, I call it After Scrubs, like After MASH, because it was Scrubs Medical School. But what season was that? Like 2009 is when Scrubs season 8 happened. So because the next season
is that
Scrubs
when
was
Carrie
still
Bichet came on and as the main character?
Who?
Carrie Bichet, is that her name?
Oh, I didn't know her name. I called her Blonde Scrubs Girl. New Blonde Scrubs Girl. What did she do after Scrubs?
She was there was the AMC series with Lee Pace, Halt and Catch Fire, which is amazing. I would recommend to if anyone has not seen it, about a computer company in Texas trying to become relevant in the mid 80s. Really, really cool period piece. Scoop McNairy's in it too. It's really, really good.
By the way, yes, Carrie Bichet, Lucy Bennett. Good job on you. I did not know. I so revile that last season of Scrubs.
Oh, it's bad, but I knew her because then I saw her in the other show. So,
to me, that anyone that was the lead on that wasn't already famous faded into obscurity in my mind. They were gone. But no, good for her. Good for her.
It's tough for her to try and follow up what JD had already laid out for the past 7 seasons and kind of owned as the narrator. Andy, what do you got?
Oh my God. I thought, why does she look familiar? I clicked on her Wikipedia and I thought, oh, this lady looks familiar. I have seen her in something else. There are 2 things. One, genuinely good. She was in Argo. Good for her.
Right. Yep.
2, she plays Madam Web's mom. She plays Dakota Johnson's character's mom in Madam Web.
Oh, wow.
In the trailer that everyone made fun of, the line where they go, my mother went to the jungle to study spiders. She's the mom who dies in the first 5 minutes in childbirth in the jungle. Randy, Madam Web is as terrible as you've seen if you haven't seen it. I watched it and laughed it. I split the cost with a friend so that 2 of us didn't pay to give them money.
Oh, wow.
We paid half. So we rented it and we paid half to give them as little money as possible, but we had to see it. Everything is true. Everything they say about that movie is true. You should see it almost just to say you've seen these terrible things, Randy. Anyway, your girl who you love in your little show is Madam Web's mom, and she's again lost all credibility. You can't be an After Scrubs and Madam Web and keep me invested in your career.
I don't know. She was in *Halt and Catch Fire* before Madam Web, so.
And after Scrubs.
Yeah, I mean, been around Argo, so interesting. I just looked at that same
it's a real
Wikipedia page.
Down.
Her husband and the actor that played her husband in Argo is also the husband that played, or the actor who plays her husband in *Halt and Catch Fire*. Scoop McNair.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, are they husband and wife in real life too?
No. So just happen to be. Yeah. They're just hanging out a lot together at that point.
So what are your thoughts on Scrubs as it went on? I thought that I always enjoyed it, but it really did lose some of the original heart that it had, and it became the goofy goof fest.
I loved it at the time. I revisited it recently, like in the last 2-3 years, and just it was fun. Maybe I was of the age, or I was kind of figuring out my my occupational path. I was kind of working through, I'm going to try this, I'm going to maneuver through this, and that's kind of what they're doing, and how sometimes life is comedic, even if it's tragic, even if it's, there's a lot of things that will happen to you in your environment you can't control, and you have to just kind of look at it for what it is. And sometimes it's surreal, and that's certainly what JD did. But I don't know. I think it's a different show now. Like if Scrubs comes out today, it's a totally different show. Like there's a lot more aspects where they're focused on mental health, I think, right? Like, and it's fascinating. But
I will say that there's the one aspect of that show that doesn't age well for me, and it's a lot of 2000s comedies don't age well. There's a lot of gay panic and a lot of homophobia and a lot of transphobia, and it's not like I'm sitting here like, let's all talk about that. But there's where a lot of those shows don't age well to me is the gay panic vibes. Like, it's not just that it's played as a joke, because you can play anything as a joke if you do it right. All the jokes are played with just that little twinge of hate and gross. And then when you watch some of those shows, I'm like, oh, that could still be a funny joke if it wasn't just that touch vitriolic when I watch it. And it's odd.
A small component of that show that I take a lot of delight in watching is Ted's acapella group when he shows up.
Oh, agreed.
So much fun. So much
fun. And we talked about this in the last one too. If you ever want to see the continuation of Ted, watch the show that I think is very underrated, Cougar Town. He continues on as that character in Cougar Town in regular cameo appearances.
Which is pretty amazing. So to go from, well, I guess Scrubs was on ABC at the time, right? So it's not, but still to just say to same character just goes to a different one.
So you know how a lot of shows would do the 30-second end credit joke stinger in this era? Because they rush through the credits, the next show's starting, but they give you one 30-second scene as a joke while the credits play.
Yep.
One of the best Cougar Town jokes ever is most of the actors from Scrubs came on to play different characters on Cougar Town. But Ted played the same character. So they had Ted in a room, and all the actors who played other characters came on, but it was still Ted. And he had a nervous breakdown because it was Dr. Kelso played Ellie's father. What's her name? The blonde girl who's also on Rick and Morty does the voice of the wife. Sarah Chalk came on and did as a character. Zach Braff had played a random pizza guy that episode. It's like a cameo. They all came in as Ted was sitting there on a couch playing guitar, and he went, what? And Kelso, as the actor, came in last, and he passed out. So I was like, oh, that's a great stinger. That's your Scrubs quota.
Good stuff.
Or coda. I said quota. Coda.
Quota and coda.
Very, very good. Important to note, the next season, there are no new comedy shows, but it is also the writer's strike. The 2008 writer's strike begins to affect this season because Scrubs, everything ends early to the point where the 9 to 9:30 spot becomes the Celebrity Apprentice. We often say we're not going to talk politics, and we're going to say this, but fuck Donald Trump. I don't care. I'll say it regularly. Fuck that guy.
It's a popular song title, so you could certainly just say that you were referencing that if there's any.
No, I'm not going to say it. I will briefly talk politics and say fuck that guy. Anyway, moving on. You don't have to say it. You don't have to support a person, yes or no. I don't worry. Randy's not MAGA, Mooga. But
what
he also is trying, he's also trying to be more inclusive than I am.
Make out of office great again.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Randy's a much more polite and kind fellow
diplomatic
than I am. Fuck that guy.
Remember, I got to run in the future. Yeah. We talked about this on this episode. So
actually, I forgot about that entirely. So the other thing to note too is that this is the first time since 1994, even though we don't talk about the 10 o'clock spot because of the writer's strike. It's the first time since 1994 ER doesn't finish the season at the 10 o'clock spot.
Right.
They start it, but because of the writer's strike, they move a comedy drama show with Brooke Shields that was not supposed to be at the 10 o'clock spot on Thursdays into that to finish the season. That show lasted a season and a half, got canceled, not worth discussing. But just a fascinating note that for all these years that we've been talking, since 1994, through 2 episodes, like a decade plus, it's been ER at the 10 o'clock spot the entire time. So the next season, the writer's strike eventually ends. They figure out how to start fast-tracking some TV. And the next season, 2008 to 2009, is still affected by it because they just can't do enough, right? You get the final season of My Name is Earl at 8 o'clock for the entire rip. And we have now already talked across 2 episodes. What a bummer the way that show ended. Yeah. They thought they were going to get another season. It ends on a cliffhanger. They can't finish it. Bummer. The first show that debuts at 8:30 in 2008 is Kath and Kim. Mm-hmm. Did you do any research on Kath and Kim?
I did a little bit, and I also watched it pretty routinely.
Did you?
Yeah.
The 17 episodes that aired before it was canceled, you watched those.
Yeah, I think Thursday night was a oft time that I would sit down and watch. So this was still, well, I guess DVR was a thing, but I remember very often watching Thursday night NBC from at least 8:30 till 10. But not always My Name is Earl, but yeah.
We all watched, I think, really, we talk about NBC. We're talking about this being part 2 of this because really from the height of it with Cheers beginning in the early 90s, in that era, they had a lock on. And that's why they tried out new shows at 8:30 and 9:30. Mm-hmm. Normally, what's interesting to me about this one is why I want to get into it is the path generally for an 8:30 show on Thursday would be sandwiched between 2 hits. It would get good ratings. It would then move to another night where it could not sustain those ratings, and it would be canceled. Mm-hmm. That was a pretty regular pattern.
Which I think, is that what happened with Kath and Kim?
No. Kath and Kim lived its in. Did it move? I thought it ran its entire run.
Oh, it got canceled after a season, so no. It was just...
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's what my whole point was going to be. This was the rare before you cut me off with your Kath and Kim love because of how much you love Kath and Kim. You defended to the death. I would say I've never liked Molly Shannon. I didn't really like her on SNL. I don't like things she's done since. Her brand of comedy is not for me in how she does things. The I'm 50, the Mary Catherine Gallagher, never liked her on SNL. I don't like Molly Shannon. So I am one of the people that turned this show off when it came on.
Okay.
My point being is that the long preamble that would have been shorter if you didn't make me start over, you son of a bitch. This is a 8:30 Thursday show that lived and died and got canceled and had its episode count reduced.
Yeah.
Thursdays at 8:30.
Sure.
It was supposed to go the full deal. It got reduced to its 17 episodes. It got canceled and ratings plummeted. It got negative reviews, but it debuted strong. It started off at 7.46 million viewers, that good Thursday 8:30 goodness. Its low was 4.88 million viewers. It did rebound for its finale. I'm thinking buoyed by the fact that any advertisement that says, hey, finale of whatever, usually gets a ratings boost because people look at things, and it's that time of year where it's putting finales on. That said, it didn't go.
And this mid-season, it got replaced. Based off of a beloved Australian sitcom, so it just that had gained a lot of international acclaim, and so I think that got its initial boost, is that the people were intrigued by how it was going to follow along. I will say, I think Molly Shannon, I I'm hit or miss with her. I do like some things she does. But there are, she was probably one of the weak points of this. Selma Blair was pretty good. I thought Mikey Day actually was really, really good. It was one of the first times I can remember seeing Mikey Day in something.
Fascinated to see his name on the cast list because I didn't realize or remember him being a part of this at all.
He was Selma Blair's boyfriend, plays kind of this like bro dude, kind of naive, just like boyfriend type. Yeah. So I mean, the idea on Kath and Kim is they're sort of, I don't know what the word is. People that don't do anything, right? Like they just.
So the original Australian show, in classic overseas fashion, they only did 3 seasons, but it was 3 spread across seasons over a few years of 8 episodes. In very overseas fashion, you got 3 seasons and a TV movie to end it for a total of 32 episodes of television that for people is like beloved because that's all they ever did and that's all they'll ever get. And it was amazing. This was still this is before American models started to switch suit. This is when you did a grind out full season of TV and it didn't go the distance. But this also, I think, comes in the wake of The Office being a hit that was a British remake. And they're like, well, we can start repurposing some of these. And it just didn't go. Then at 9 o'clock is The Office for season 3, which this is, I'm sorry, I skipped the important thing at 8:30, Parks and Rec. The replacement for Kath and Kim,
which is kind of
the
rough.
First season of Parks and Rec. Famously, the first 6 episodes of Parks and Rec are deeply terrible.
Not great.
They are deeply terrible.
Well, they tried to make Leslie Knope be like Michael Scott, and it just didn't work. Once they realized that the heart was the hook on that show, it became probably one of my favorite sitcoms of all time.
The problem is they made Leslie incompetent in the first 6 episodes, properly incompetent. Leslie Knope is she's the smartest person in the room. The problem is she gets overzealous, and you're right, it's the heart. That's what made it work. And it's such a different show. And it's the first of those Michael Schur shows where the heart, because he's a writer on it, and you feel the heart. And that's why I went on to love Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Good Place. And these shows that you feel these characters love each other. Even when they hate each other, they love each other. And that's why I've talked about why I can't get into some other shows, why I don't like Will and Grace, why I don't like Schitt's Creek. It's because these shows are about nasty people who kind of stay nasty, even when they love each other and they might learn a lesson. Like Schitt's Creek, they grow, but they're still kind of always those selfish people to a degree.
I mean, that's part of the great thing about this show, about Parks and Rec, is the evolution of Tom Haverford, of, like these people that aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they have this redeeming. They find the redeeming qualities, and the other people encourage the redeeming qualities. Like, I mean, Ron Swanson, probably one of my favorite characters in the history of TV, is finds a way to be that, like he doesn't take any bullshit, and sometimes it's just like, all right, you're being hard-headed, but then he's also pushing people in the right direction, like what he does with Tom, like how there's so many different good things that this show, when it was on, serially, as I think of it, this was the time, and we'll have to get there in a couple of years, I guess, because it'll probably be like 2010, 2011. I can't remember being more anticipatory or excited to watch an episode of a show than when Parks and Rec was on in its mid-season end of run.
The next season, and they hit it one more time because they moved a lot of shows around in time slots, and I don't want to spoil the next season yet because there's a show that we'll talk about that is crucial to everything I want to say.
Sure.
But there are 2 seasons in this lineup that we're going to talk about of Comedy Night Done Right that are 8 to 10 o'clock perfect.
Yep.
Don't change the channel. Don't change the dial. Stay in. And I remember the vitriol when they did change the lineups. I remember fan outcries of like, you had it. You had it. What are you fucking doing? You had it. But we are not there yet.
Okay.
That said,
but you're right. This iteration of Parks and Rec is flawed. Yeah, it's very much finding its footing, and I'm glad it got brought back and did not fail because of this, because God, we would have missed out.
It's a real different era, I feel like. we've talked about the rare, I say different era because this happens. It's not that it's different eras, that every now and again you get an executive who likes the show and doesn't cancel it. They decide to give it a shot. Cheers. I go back to Cheers. Cheers was the lowest rated show on television the year it debuted. And somebody just thought, I like it. Let's give it another year. And it turned into the biggest show on TV. Sometimes
Seinfeld.
You have to have patience with things. Yes. And the problem is people don't want to have patience, both in movies and TV ratings. They want it right now. So MCU, Iron Man wasn't the biggest movie of the year. It was like the 8th biggest movie of the year. Give things time to grow. People don't want to give things time to grow anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's true.
So the last thing that we'll talk about for the year to help with the fact that the writer's strike, that's why you see some of these half seasons and things. 30 Rock was very affected by the writer's strike. When it came back, they start the year with SNL Weekend Update Thursday, which was to help get shows along, and also because it was an election year. And this was a big year because Tina Fey, Sarah Palin, 2008 election.
Sure.
They did some of the classic bits that you remember from SNL actually came on. They would do a single sketch and then do a weekend update for 15 minutes. They would do a sketch and a weekend update for Weekend Update Thursday at 9:30. And one of my favorite weekend update bits of this era, do you remember when Hall & Oates, this is before they broke up, recently, obviously, this is 2008, they come on Weekend Update, and it's Fred Armisen is Oates, and I think Will Forte is Daryl Hall. And it's Daryl Hall is voting for Obama and Oates is voting for McCain. And they realize that during a song. They're doing You Make My Dreams Come True. And they start singing about their political choices. And they start arguing, but they never stop singing the song.
Oh, I have to go back and check it out. I vaguely remember it, but yeah.
Find this bit. And it's like, Daryl Hall's like, ooh, Obama, you make my dreams come true. And then out of nowhere, Oates goes, ooh, ooh, McCain's good too. Ooh, McCain.
I would love to know who I'd put even odds that Forte wrote that bit too, but it's
yeah. And it's just a really goofy, fun bit. And they never break song, and I love it. Moving on. Pour one out for my homies, because I'm a hip, cool guy. We come back for the 2008-2009 season for the final time with ER, the final season of ER, at 10 o'clock, eventually replaced by the show Southland, which I believe did get 5 seasons, but it moved to TNT. So it was canceled by NBC, and this was one of those early, hey, you know what? No, we're not. The NBC started canceling stuff because this is also when Scrubs moved to ABC.
Yep.
And then people went full sail and started like, you know what, we'll have that. I am fascinated to talk about the next year because the important thing to note is, do I want to go in order? I'm going to ask you, do you want to go in order of the season and what happened? Or do you want to talk about the state of NBC for the 2009-2010 season of television?
Let's start with the state, set it up.
This is Team Coco. This is Conan gets the Tonight Show. Conan barely gets the Tonight Show. He's fired. After a couple of months, Jay Leno comes back. Part of the problem is that they decide Jay Leno's not really leaving. He's going to do a 10 o'clock show that drives everyone away.
Yep.
And I am hard in the camp that his 10 o'clock show drove everyone away before the news.
Yep.
So that there was no audience left for Conan at 11:30. But they played it as Conan can't have an audience.
Right.
And Jay Leno's back. And woof, right? Just woof. There's a great book written by a sequel book because Jay Leno has fucked over a lot of people at late night. You had the original Late Shift scandal and book when he got the Tonight Show and he fucked over Letterman. Then you have this one where he fucked over Conan, but boy, did they get a lot of good TV out of this.
Yeah.
Conan leaned into it. Conan leaned into this and made the best TV possible. But my point being is that the comedy landscape was really heavily focused on the late night and not the 2 hours preceding the news from or preceding late night from 8 to 10 before Jay Leno. You started the season at 8 o'clock with leading in. They're like, let's try that Weekend Update Thursday again. And it did well. They started the season with it. Then you get the debut of motherfucking Community. Community, I'm not 100% if it debuted in the 9:30 spot and then moved to 8 and then after Weekend Update finished based on the grid, because it debuted this season. I'm thinking it went Weekend Update Thursday.
I think so.
Parks and Rec, The Office,
I think
Community.
There were 6 episodes of Weekend Update Thursday I saw. So
then Community moves to 8. Parks and Rec, The Office, 30 Rock.
Then we're locked in. Yeah. Don't move for 2 hours.
From the fall, winter, and spring, there's no more changes. And this is the first. And I say that because with all the drama happening in late night, you get an entire year of Community, Parks and Rec, The Office, and 30 Rock. And this is perfect, top to bottom, especially because if I look up Community Season 1, Community took some time to find its voice in the first season, but it did not take the time to find its voice that Parks and Rec or The Office or maybe even 30 Rock took. They took a few episodes, but boy, they started hitting the ground real fast, real soon. If you look at the first 6 episodes of the season, to me, the first real winner is episode 5, which is Advanced Criminal Law, where Britta cheats on her test and Jeff has to be her lawyer. And it also, to me, is the first episode where you get to focus on the dean and how ridiculous he is, because he is so obsessed with the Olympic-sized swimming pool Greendale has. That's where they have the trial. They don't have a courtroom. They have the trial in the Olympic-sized swimming pool area. And that's those first hints to me, the first hints of what this show can become. Because the other shows have it, but it's really introducing the characters still. Episode 5 is the first one where the characters start to breathe. B plot of this episode is the start of Troy and Abed's friendship. The A plot is this ridiculous trial. So like I keep saying season 5. Episode 5 is the start of Community. You get a couple episodes of that. And then episode 9 is the famous debate episode of season 1. So I'm like, they're off and running in Parks and then Parks and Rec, season 2, it's a few episodes into season 2 where they click. I remember, I got to look up now. I want to ask you a question about in season 2, when did it click for you? Because I know the episode where it clicked for me.
I'm going to look at the episodes here. Yeah.
Now, I've gone back, and I would say retroactively, this is not the episode where it clicked for me, but retroactively, I could say it had clicked as early as Sister City, episode 5. Not to say the other ones weren't bad, but that one's great.
That's the Venezuelan one, right? Yeah.
Yes.
That's
it's
really
still
good.
a little weird. And then the next one, Kaboom, I love a lot. And then that's why I say retroactively, it could probably say it clicked then. And Kaboom is great, where they build the park and they decide they're going to do it themselves. But to me, weirdly, the episode where it clicked for me, and I was watching it, I was working at a local NBC News affiliate at this time. We would do the 10 o'clock news. And then, so from 8 to like 9:45, we were watching shows, which is also maybe why I clicked into 30 Rock later, because it took that 9:30 spot. I couldn't always watch all of 30 Rock when I was working. What a statement to say, by the way. So, I was really dialed in on these shows. So I would always watch Parks and Rec, and we were like, this show sucks, but it was on because we're working an NBC affiliate.
Yeah.
I was forced to watch NBC. Basically, I worked at 2 different NBC affiliates from 2003 to 2009. So, no, to 2010. I left in 2010.
Okay.
So I was all in. I knew these shows. It was episode 7 of season 2, Greg Pakaitis.
Yeah.
Where Leslie has to try to find this punk, and Anne's trying to have a Halloween party. The next episode is Ron and Tammy, which is an all-time classic.
Sure.
But to me, I was watching this show and I thought, God damn, this show's funny.
Yeah.
And you know what? The best part about this, I didn't realize this until right now, until I'm looking at Wikipedia. Right now, always knowing this was the episode that clicked in for me, written by Michael Schur.
There you go.
Holy shit. I have a type, don't I? So, do you have an episode for this season? And if you can't place one, that's fine. I just know that this was the one for me where I went, oh my God, this show is good.
So I think it started to get fun with Sister City and Kaboom. I think I'm in. But then I'm with you with like all the stuff that happened with Picard, especially at the end when you find out that he hired an actress to play his mom to get one over on her. Like it just, I don't know. There was a nice, like, because this was one of the ones where Leslie was getting like one-upped by the kid, but it still felt, it didn't feel because of incompetence. It just felt like, she was just like angry, and then what she was trying to do was just get away. Yeah, this felt more, I don't know, you could start to see it more than her just being sort of a jerk.
Leslie was hyper competent. Also, she was already dating the cop at that point, Dave.
Right.
And she wasn't like, obviously Mark Brandanowitz, we've talked about Parks and Rec, I think before, where he didn't make it past the second season. They always said he could come back as a guest. Never happened because he was a pointless character. Getting her longer.
Did he though? Did he? I thought
he never came back. He never came back after season 2. He wasn't in the
early second season? I thought that's when.
No, that's what I'm saying. After season 2, he never came back.
Gotcha.
They said he could come back, and he never came back after season 2. My point being is, though, she had already moved on from him and was dating Dave, and wasn't the puppy dog eyes for Mark Brandanowitz. She was her own character, and she was hyper competent. She just kept getting in these scenarios where she was losing, and you rooted for her in this episode because of that shit-nosed punk little kid. You wanted her to win. And you hadn't wanted her to win yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
And that's what got you. And that's what got me. So, and then the next episode, Ron and Tammy, is just funny. Just funny. Too funny to be ignored.
And you see written by Mike Scully, so it's like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Simpsons veteran who became a big part of their writer's room. Just, my goodness, right? It's... Man,
it starts to kick in, and then it doesn't let go from there. Which I don't have anything bad really to say about the show once we get past the first like 5.
No,
that first season.
And you're right, because unlike The Office, which had a steep decline, like season 6 through 9, any decline Parks and Rec had, and there was a decline. Let's not lie, was minimal to me. Because I still think they went out on the highest of high notes.
And redeemed, yeah.
And yes, honestly, when Rob Lowe and Rashida Jones left, it had a dip because they did feel necessary. But they came back for the finale, and the finale stuck the landing so hard. Some of classic bits I love, Cones of Dunshire, and him playing with the geeks at the tech company are in the dip era. There's great bits in that era. Yeah.
I was trying to think of, and I'm sure there's...
It's about the cones.
There's other instances of it, but Adam Scott and Rob Lowe come into that show midway through and just being so instrumental for the... I can't think of, mid sequence that then becomes so ingrained in the fabric of the show and so important to how good it is. I mean, I'm sure off the top of my head, or there are instances I'm sure in there, but a lot of times people come in, they are considered just... oh, this was brought in to boost ratings or do something like that.
The cousin Oliver on the Brady Bunch.
Exactly.
The Snevin on Married with Children, who went away, hilariously enough. The little kids. They brought in kids. But the great point about the Rob Lowe thing, too, is the reason that the character was written and designed the way he was to go back to Indianapolis.
Right.
This was a short-term boost that they all saw it. They all felt it. And Rob Lowe's too savvy as an actor and a performer to not feel that. And he's like, I'll stick around.
Second time he did that too. He did that on West Wing too. How crazy is that?
Yeah. No, West Wing he left. It was the opposite, right?
I thought he came in. Did he?
No.
Did he start it backwards? You're right.
No, Rob Lowe, I was like, yes. No, Randy, you're wrong. I said yes because I was so ready to agree with you. No, he was a regular. And then Martin Sheen was the one that was supposed to be a guest star. And he became a regular. And then because the president was so prominent where he wasn't going to be as prominent a role, that Rob Lowe was not as prominent and he left the show.
I have it backwards in my head. Okay, yeah.
Martin Sheen showed up at the end as the president, right, in that first episode, and he was going to do sporadic guest appearances.
Right.
And I say this having researched this because I actually did a West Wing binge just before this podcast started. Not like today, like this episode, but last year before we started doing it.
I need to go back and revisit because that's just, but that's
So it was interesting. I say I worked at an NBC affiliate. I started in the post-Aaron Sorkin years. So I actually watched everything after Aaron Sorkin left and knew it. Went back and watched the Aaron Sorkin stuff. And yes, I see it's better, but I still have a soft spot for those posts. I watched after Rob Lowe had left the show. He was never a part of the show to me when I watched the first time. Then I went back and revisited all of that. But my goodness. Then The Office, we're still in the golden era of The Office, obviously. Yeah. 30 Rock, which I've revisited 30 Rock, seasons 2, 3, 4. Perfect. I love 30 Rock.
Sure.
I feel like 30 Rock is more divisive than some other shows that we're talking about, but it gets me.
It's funny. It gets me. It's funny. Like, I mean, people can, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Is it because it's tired or it's too much or it's in people's minds. I never get tired of that kind of joke styles.
I think some people think it's tired and too much, and also some people don't like Alec Baldwin and Tina Fey, and not even from a political liberal standpoint, they don't like how they perform or go about things or do, like, they just don't think they're funny. And I do. I think they're amazing.
Yes. I'm with you on that. I might have glossed over it, but just do you have what's your favorite Community episode? Is it the multiple timelines, whatever that one is?
Are we talking about just this season or overall?
Let's go overall. So, I mean, we can keep talking. I mean, it's just as we're introducing Community, I'm thinking about it because mine is the video game one, because I think that one is my favorite.
I love that episode. I adore that episode. Weirdly enough, I'd like to pick one of their rare two-parters.
So
because they did a couple of those. What's up?
The Goodfellas, the chicken fingers?
No, that's not a two-parter. That's a single episode. No, 100%. That's a single. By the way, I would like to note that I talk about where the show finds its footing, and I talk about that retroactively again. The Goodfellas chicken fingers episode is the episode in the first season where I realized it was genius. Where it clicked me. Because I was watching, no one else in the control room was watching the show at this point. I was alone watching it, and I had my feet up, like next to a switcher, and I'm sitting there and I'm eating dinner because it was on at 8 o'clock at this point. And there's like one or two other people, no one's paying attention. And I'm watching the show and I'm like, I remember this. This is how clearly I remember this. I'm sitting there and I was like, no one's looking. And I'm just desperate to look at somebody and go, are they doing fucking Goodfellas? Like, I'm like, no one is around for me. I'm like, they're doing fucking Goodfellas. And now I can't like process this to anybody.
Yeah.
And it's so, a revelation to me. I'm like, no one's, they're doing fucking Goodfellas. And it was so mind-blowing to me. That was the touchstone episode for me. And then I was in. And then obviously season 1, you get the paintball episodes and all that other stuff. And that was great. If you listen to some of their commentaries and their interviews, season 1, and I haven't gotten to your answer yet. I'm sorry. I will get you an answer.
All right.
Season 1 does 3 finales because they extended their episodes and they didn't know what to do. So they basically said they did 3 finales. They did the generic comedy finale, which was the train gets fired episode.
Yep.
They did the paintball episode, which was the highfalutin concept finale. And then they did the rom-com emotional finale, which was the actual proper finale that they did. Which they were like, we got extended and we didn't expect to get extended. So we did the 3 finales for us. And I was like, that's great. And they're all bangers. It's a great first season. My personal favorite episode, though, and the reason I was going to say two-parters is my all-time favorite episode is, I think it's season 3, is part 2, Pillows and Blankets, when they do this Civil War documentary narrated by
Ken
Keith
Burns.
David.
Yes,
Ken Burns. I love that episode, but it's hard for me to not give the first, even though it's completely different tone, style, I give the first episode as part of that. I watch them as a double feature.
Yeah.
That episode in itself is a sequel to their Blanket Fort episode in, I think, season 2, which is it season 1 or 2, which has one of my favorite Britta moments where Britta starts to come out of her shell, because they wrote Britta very differently than they would write Britta, when she became the goofy character that everyone ragged on.
Yeah.
One of the early moments where she was allowed to not just be the smartest person in the room and she was a Kevin can fuck himself woman in the first season and the first two, where she was always the smartest person in the room giving a wisecrack. She wasn't allowed to have a character the first season and a half, I felt like.
Right.
She was a sex object for Jeff Winger. Then she became a character. One of the first moments of that is in the Blanket Fort episode, where they're doing the chase and they got into a random room, and Britta had early in the episode said how stupid the Blanket Forts were, and you hadn't seen her all episode, and she's in like this weird harem den, like smoking a hookah, like finally having had sex, like, hey guys, how we doing? And I was like, oh, that's a good joke. And then she really started to develop after that. I could do my favorite moments of the first few seasons of Community all day.
Yeah.
But we should move on. Then it's the Jay Leno show. And the problem is that year is perfect. 8 to 10.
Yep. And
I remember the internet, as the internet was really coming into its critical own around this time, as interneting. Because when did Rotten Tomatoes start as a thing? 2000, when did it start? Oh, it says 1998. When did it become popular, you fucks? 2009 to 2010 is when IGN sold to Flickster, and then it was sold again in 2011. So 2009, to me, 2009, 10, 11 is when Rotten Tomatoes started to really blow up.
Yep.
The point in that is that that's also when internet criticism started to really blow up, and everyone was starting to have an opinion.
Okay.
Right? We always had them, but you get my meaning.
Sure.
The point being is this is when season 2 of Community happens at 8 o'clock. And that's when the famous line, 6 seasons in a movie, happens. Because the ratings are such, this and that. Then you have 30 Rock. Then you have The Office. I'm skipping over the replacements for 8:30. We will dial back to these.
Sure.
We've been talking about the nature of comedy. I actually want to start with the show that breaks up the perfect run in people's minds at 9:30, because I don't feel like people had the vitriol, weirdly enough, because you get mid-season replacements at 8:30 of 30 Rock for The Perfect Couples and The Paul Reiser Show. We'll dial back to those.
Yep.
You get at 8 Community, at 8:30 30 Rock, at 9 o'clock The Office, but at 9:30 was supposed to be Parks and Rec.
Right.
They even did. Do you remember they filmed a commercial announcing their comeback date?
Right.
Then they replaced it with this show called Outsourced. And they had to film another jokey commercial saying, we've moved our date. And it was Rob Lowe going, we've been moved? Why the fuck am I here then? If I don't have to work for another 6 hours. And it was funny.
Right.
But it was also very annoying because they had shot the end of season 2 and the start of season 3 at the same time because Amy Poehler had gotten pregnant.
Right.
So the start of season 3 wasn't being shot. We're working on it. It had been filmed months ago. It was ready to go. And they broke up the perfect lineup for Outsourced. And the internet lost its goddamn mind. Do you remember this show? Do you remember this?
I do not remember. And now that you're bringing it up, I remember the part about Parks and Rec. I remember Outsourced. I remember just it being on and watching it and then going like, this is just nothing. There's just really, it's very, very little substance to it. Yeah, it's weird. You look at what it's developed. It was developed off of a movie from a couple of years prior that was kind of exploring the same concept. And the guy who did that never did anything else.
That weird, we talk about the early 2000s and sitcoms, and we are going to dial back to the 8:30 shows, but to me, this is the bigger conversation right now. It was that awkward part where it was a bit racist. It was white guy goes to India to work in call center, and whatever the movie was, I think was a romantic comedy. They took that basic concept, which again, I haven't seen the movie, but they took the concept of white guy goes to India to work at call center replacing jobs, and it became a culture clash sitcom. Culture clash sitcom in the 2000s means racist.
Yeah.
Racist as fuck. And listen, Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 21%. Metacritic has it as a 46 out of 100. Critics didn't like it. The ratings debuted at the 9:30 spot after The Office at 7.4 million viewers. And do you remember we had talked earlier about Kath and Kim got to 4.4 and they canceled it, right? After 17 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
This show got to 2.99 million.
Oof.
They gave it the full season. They gave it the half season before they moved days. But it ended its run at 2.99 million. And that's rough. My favorite part about this is that when Community was getting its second season, when Parks and Rec and The Office and 30 Rock were having this run, there was a lot of fan support of, we love Parks and Rec. Please don't cancel it. We love Community. Please don't cancel it. When the renewal of the show was not announced with the renewal of all the other NBC shows, the cast and crew started a campaign for fans of the show to request its renewal. End of sentence. That did not happen. On May 13th, 2011, NBC, no one wanted it to be renewed. It was the cast and crew saying, you love us too.
Yeah.
No, we don't. We don't want you here. We don't want your weird, awkwardly kind of racist, bad comedy show. It felt like a show that debuted in the 2000s that should have debuted in the 90s and still probably would have been canceled, but maybe would have played better.
I think so.
You broke up the perfect lineup for fucking Outsource. And I will always hate you for that.
Yeah.
Dial back to 8:30. Let's talk about the other shows. And you can't give them fault for breaking up the perfect lineup because 30 Rock did start the season. They moved it to another night to try some things. 30 Rock would eventually move back. Wait, what happened?
I thought they moved it to 10 o'clock. I thought this was when they tried that experiment where they did 3 hours of stuff. Yeah.
Yes, because this was post Jay Leno failure.
Yep.
They didn't have any 10 o'clock dramas developed. That's right. They had stopped developing 10 o'clock dramas because Jay Leno was going to solve their problems at 10 o'clock.
Right. He did not.
So when that, you're absolutely right. I stopped looking at 10 for this. You're right. Outsource eventually moved to that's where it finished. It didn't move to another night. Outsource moved to the 10:30 spot where it died a death. Gosh, because Jay Leno ruined 10 o'clock for a couple of years. The first on his own and then the fallout of him.
Yep.
So yes, Parks and Rec would come back. 30 Rock would move to 9. Outsource would move to 9:30. So you still had kind of a decent lineup of Community. You would try a couple of new shows at 8:30, which we'll get into. The Office, Parks and Rec, 30 Rock, Outsourced. And then I know the local news was not happy because Outsourced killed the ratings. But let's talk Perfect Couples. Do you remember this show? Because I don't. And also, apparently Olivia Munn was in it. And was this her post G4 project where she's like, I can be an actress?
Yes. She had also been in something else fairly recently before that.
She was on The Daily Show. This was pre-Newsroom.
Gotcha. I actually didn't mind this show. Hot take, I guess. I don't know.
Well, it only aired 11 episodes. The last 2 only went online. It was canceled.
It was sort of, so the premise, essentially, you got the two...
It had worse ratings than Outsourced. I'm going to let you finish.
Did it really? Wow, okay. It was better than Outsourced, which is not a high bar, but it was better than Outsourced.
On the flip side, though, one of its regular directors was the person who directed the second half of Seinfeld's run, Andy Ackerman. Okay. So it had a pedigree of a director. But anyway, please continue your anecdote. I keep cutting you off.
No, it had the quote unquote normal couple, married couple that had their sets of friends that were couples. One was the Olivia Munn and what's that guy's name? Hayes MacArthur, I think. Is that I had to look it up. Yeah.
Honestly, she's the only name I remember here. I don't know any of these other
when you
names.
see it, you're like, oh yeah, that guy. I didn't know what his name was until I looked it up, but they are kind of the highfalutin couple, I guess, the fancy couple, the one that looks the part and have all the nice kind of the high priced wealthy that look very put together. And then there's the other two, and this is another guy who, when you see him, and I'm gonna look up his name, but David Walton, who's been in a lot of stuff. And when you see him, you're like, oh, that guy. He was in New Girl for a while. He was in Cracking Up, I guess, is where he got his break.
Okay. No, these all sound vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
And I also recognize Mary Elizabeth Ellis. I didn't know the name, but she's the waitress and Always Sunny, Charlie Day's wife. And
so
yeah, I've done some other things.
Her and her boyfriend, this guy I'm talking, David Walton, are kind of like the crazy couple. Like they're just they're volatile. They fight all the time, but then they make up all the time, and they just do all this kind of crazy stuff. So it's navigating through the three of them. It always comes back to the main couple. And it kind of feels there's some weird parallels. Obviously, there's no fantasy football in it, but to what the league would explore, it kind of has that same kind of interactionary with their friends and certain types of characters. But the tricky thing is there wasn't any sort of anchoring other than just their day to day, right? So they weren't able to build from anything other than, hey, we're going to try and get together and do this, and shenanigans ensue, which. I mean, can be a typical sitcom, but they didn't really have anywhere to go beyond that. There wasn't a developmental thing that happened. I mean, I would assume one of them would get pregnant. That would probably be something that, in a semi-tired studio trope that would happen. But
was it single camera or multi-camera?
Single cam.
Okay.
Yeah. But it had its entertaining points to it. But I'm not surprised it went away because it wasn't that memorable, but enjoyable enough when it was on.
I'm going to read you verbatim the Wikipedia because one of my favorite things in life is people on Wikipedia who update articles to try to sound as thorough as possible. Also just wind up sounding like they're throwing shade by being as thorough as possible and adding extra unnecessary details. Like whoever wrote this clearly felt like this was a necessary detail, but to me it's not. But it just makes me laugh because it makes it sound worse.
Yeah.
Okay. On March 22nd, 2011, it was announced that the Paul Reiser Show would replace Perfect Couples, even though the show still had 2 unaired episodes remaining. This line is the part that I think is unnecessary and was clearly written by whoever edited this Wikipedia to feel thorough.
Yeah.
Mid-April is not a typical time for a network TV show to finish its run, leading many to assume the show had been canceled. Yeah, no shit. That's what you just said.
Right.
So it's just funny, the extra shade that gets thrown at it when people write those lines in.
Well,
however, and we'll get right to the next show, the premiere of the Paul Reiser Show did even worse in the ratings, showing even more uncertainty for the time slot. Paul Reiser Show was canceled after 2 episodes.
Yeah.
The funny thing is I remember this show having a lot of hype because this was Paul Reiser's return to TV after Mad About You. Not just his return to TV after Mad About You, but on NBC, the network that had Mad About You. This was a big fucking deal to NBC, just not to anybody else.
Yeah.
It's one of those shows that I think that times had moved on, audiences had changed, and people didn't care about the bad guy from Aliens that wasn't the alien,
right?
Or Paul Reiser. Sorry. But it was Paul Reiser starring as himself in a meta version.
I think they thought they could capitalize off Curb and thought it would be Curb-esque, and there was an appetite for it. So
yes, this is store brand Curb Your Enthusiasm.
And weirdly enough, I think in the first episode, Larry David's in it.
Is he?
Yeah.
So interesting. But yes, the AV Club gave the show a D+, writing that it was best summarized as complacent and everything about it feels off-putting, comparing it unfavorably to Curb, calling it a weird copycat.
There you go.
And it takes most of the trappings of Curb, but misses all of the soul. A TV critic for the Buffalo News also drew comparisons to Curb, calling it a direct steal, and noted that Reiser's good guy personality was not a good fit for Larry David's type of humor.
Yeah.
So, and that makes sense. By the way, Larry David, you were correct, did make a plot point of the first episode is Paul Reiser is mulling over an offer to host a game show that Larry David was also offered.
Okay.
So in the never aired third episode,
yeah,
Helen Hunt directed it.
Oh, wow.
So a little mad about you reading it. No report as if she acted in it, but she came back to direct it. Didn't matter, never aired. Moving on. The next season, it happens again, where I remember everyone thought, okay, you have a shot now to give us the perfect 2 hours again. You're bringing back your 10 o'clock dramas.
Yep.
And I remember everyone getting so upset because also I remember the show not being funny. Tell me if it was. Whitney debuts at 9:30 this time. You have Community at 8, Parks and Rec at 8:30, The Office at 9. You could have 30 Rock back at 9:30. Everyone's like, you're holding 30 Rock for a mid-season debut? The same people who were angry a year before said, you gave us a perfect year. Can we please just fucking have our perfect season again? You have all the shows ready to go. Whitney debuts at 9:30. And I remember people being, this one admittedly might be because of sexism.
Yeah.
But people were vitriolic about Whitney. It also has the problematic Krista Elia, who became problematic after. Whitney wasn't a great show. It did get a second season, not on Thursdays. This did the move it to another night trick that they were classic for. But I remember people being vitriolic about Whitney. And I was maybe a little because I wanted my perfect lineup, but I think a lot of other people are like, woman bad. Am I wrong? Give me your thoughts.
I think there's some of that. Whitney Cummings is also pretty divisive with her style of comedy.
Okay, so I don't know her stand-up at all.
It is, I don't know if abrasive is the right word, but it is very kind of in your face and walks the line with certain things. I mean, she's also the one, you got to remember at this time too, I think, I didn't do enough deep dive into this, but Two Broke Girls was hitting it on CBS at the same time. She was an executive producer on that. So
yes, she was. I'm reading that right now.
So I think this is one of her stars white hot at this point. And she was able to capitalize on that for both here and there. But she had been coming, I don't know if Netflix was doing stand-up yet, but I know she was becoming a more noted stand-up throughohout the country at that point.
This is around that era too. Yeah, you are correct. Yeah,
so what's the premise? It's just her and her boyfriend, right? Like
it's like it's one of your classic semi-autobiographical sitcoms.
Yeah. And as I recall, it just kind of tried to rely on, much like Two Broke Girls did, which I actually watched quite a bit for the first couple seasons, just a whole bunch of one-liners and with the benefit of laugh track, making it appear that they might be funny. But
I would note, to your points, I believe this is the first multicam sitcom since what year was that we talked about? Was the last time there was one? Was Kath and Kim multicam? No, that was single cam.
Single also, yeah.
That was because we said that 2006 or 7 or whatever was the last one, whatever that last year was where they had one. Yeah. This was, I just
the one exception of the 30 Rock episode, right? So the live 30
Rock. And that doesn't,
no, I know.
But Whitney was multicam, and there's a part of me that wonders if that was part of the reaction, is this feels antiquated, outdated, and unfunny to us.
Could be.
Because what are you giving us, this sitcom trash? We want our creative shows.
Yep.
Whitney was replaced mid-season by Up All Night, which I remember a little bit more clearly because I think it also lasted. It was the replacement for Whitney, and then it also had more name value, and it was Christina Applegate, Will Arnett, Jennifer. This had a bigger deal, right? This was a much bigger deal. I remember I wasn't vitriolic or upset at Up All Night because I liked the cast. I wanted the show to be funny.
Agreed.
The problem is it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
Christina Applegate, Will Arnett, Maya Rudolph. Yep. This had a really good pedigree. I wanted to like this show. Executive produced by Lorne Michaels. It kind of had that Dick Van Dyke old school vibe of Maya Rudolph's the host of a show and you follow the home life of Christina Applegate trying to balance her actual life while working for this famous person behind the scenes.
Right.
It gave me a real Dick Van Dyke vibe, and I was excited for that. But it, no.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. It also Steven Webered itself. It completely changed itself halfway through, or partway through. Do you remember this?
Oh, did it? Okay, I didn't remember that. No.
This blew my mind. It pulled a Steven Weber show. So in its second season, it stopped. It went on a hiatus, 11 episodes into its second season. And I remember thinking how odd this was. And it went from being a single camera taped show to a live multi-camera studio audience sitcom.
Really? I don't remember that at all. I must have tapped out beforehand. Huh.
The creator and Christina Applegate left the show. Maya Rudolph becomes the lead, and it becomes now about Ava's show being canceled and Chris, the husband, Will Arnett, trying to start a business with his brother. Like, I don't remember how they address Christina Applegate not being on the show. I'm trying to find it, but isn't that fucking bonkers?
That is really strange.
They Steven Webered it. I'm so glad that we got through a second must-see TV style NBC episode with them completely redoing a show from scratch partway through a season. I hope if we do the next era of these shows, there's another one. I really do. There is an article I found from tvguide.com called Inside the Demise of NBC's Once Promising Comedy Up All Night. It's about this. I'm scanning it. I'm going to find it real fast. I'm scanning it. Maya Rudolph was already on the show before Bridesmaid came out. Bridesmaids came out, and they reshot the pilot to put more focus on Ava as a third lead. Ava as an Oprah-esque style talk show was not supposed to be that. They did it because of Bridesmaids. Then I'm keep looking down. I'm looking down. They thought Maya was a star. This is a quote from an insider. They thought Maya was a star, and they ruined the show to accommodate her instead of developing a different show for her. Because it was the pilot they reshot. It hadn't already gone to series. They could have given her another show and written her out of the pilot. That is fascinating. So I'm looking at this. I'm not moving on until we find our answer. A script was written in which Arnett, Applegate, and Rudolph played actors portraying the characters Reagan, Chris, and Ava on a fictional show called Up All Night. They were going to retool the show to actually have made the original show be a meta show within the new show.
Oh, my head
so
hurts.
The original show would have been this show. Then off the show, Arnett would have been dating Christina Applegate, but off the show, Rudolph would have been in the show, but there would have been a cheating scandal with a who's your daddy, who's actually giving birth, who's actually Maya Rudolph's baby daddy. The changes were too much for Applegate, who quit on February 8th to make Anchorman 2. Christina got wind of all of these things going on. The show has taken, and in a statement released after she quit, said, the show has taken on a different creative direction, and I decided it is best for me to move on to other creative endeavors. Was she in breach of contract? Perhaps.
Wow.
But she argued all of these changes to Up All Night made her deal void. It is not the show she signed on to make.
That's wild.
Applegate's exit made studio executive Greenblatt even more determined to make the changes work. His thought process was, you don't give away a cast that's good. You try what you can. They brought in James Burrows, legendary director of Friends, Will and Grace, Cheers, with both Will Arnett and Maya Rudolph still under contract. They just changed it to play. I can't find out what they did to the plot of the show. How did they write out Christina Applegate? That's what I'm trying to find. How?
Yeah.
This is amazing. Just like the Steven Weber show. How do they keep doing it? What's that viral sound? How do they keep getting away with this? Anyway, here's the best part of all of that drama, right? For the last third of the season, when that show dies its first season death, before whatever would happen in the second season, we get, for a couple months, Community, 30 Rock, The Office, and Parks and Rec, in that order. For the last, just what a run. We get it one more time. And the best part of this is that is how you end Comedy Night done right. The next season would be retooled and I'll cover it right now because it was one season, because everyone made fun of this. 30 Rock made fun of this so hard. Do you remember these episodes where they made fun of the slogan? The next episode is We Peacock Comedy. The problem is it only works visually. It's like Prince having a logo for his name. They put a peacock for like a heart. Right. We love comedy. I get what they're trying to do. But the next season, 2012 to 2013, We Peacock Comedy. And 30 Rock hit them hard. But it was never the same, because the really, you would never have it again. What you had 2006 to 2012, they did a rebranding of Comedy Night Done Right, but it really was must-see TV to me in all but name. It was that same feel, that vibe, a continuation of all of their best sitcoms go to Thursday nights, right? People had name value. People drew. This was 3 different records for us. I have no idea how long this episode actually is. I have no idea what happened in this episode. But we will wrap it up. We will ask you to, before we wrap it up, listen to a very important message from me. Like this podcast on all your podcast providers. Give it 5 stars. Leave us positive reviews. If you leave us a positive review, we haven't had one since April, a positive 5-star review. We haven't been getting negative. We just haven't gotten the engagement, as the kids say. You leave us some positive 5-star reviews on your podcast listener of choice. I will read it. Don't you want these dulcet tones? Here's the deal. Okay, you know what? If you leave it and it's because you don't want me to read it and you want Randy to read it, leave that in the review. Say, I want Randy to read this one, and we will do that. It doesn't have to be mean. If it's my nasally voice driving you away because you're like, oh, I want to leave a positive review, I don't want that fucking guy to read it, Randy will read the review. I promise, which is dulcet tones. If you send us an email, though, or you contact me on social media, MikeBarcode@gmail.com or MikeBarcode, MikeBarcode, on TikTok and Instagram, and you have something negative to say, I will read that, though. You will have to put up with my bullshit, and Randy's voice will react. You know, we had a mutual friend once. It was like our 2nd or 3rd episode. I don't know if they told this or if I ever told you this. But Randy talks professionally also. So it's great that we get him for this show, because his day-to-day job involves his voice and people listening to it. And we actually had somebody say, I forgot how much I like Randy's voice. So
wow, you didn't tell me that.
If he's the draw to get you to read or to leave a review, so his voice will read it instead of mine, do that. It'll be okay.
Goodbye, everybody.
A little nasally for my taste, usually a little smoother with it. I'm going to leave this in. This is part of the goodbye. You want to say it again? Or you want me to just hit stop recording? It's your call. I'm looking at you. Oh, you're getting the X. You're like, he threw up an X on the video like a wrestler had been injured. Like, I think he just broke his leg and to stop the match. Bye, everybody.